أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبا القاسم المصطفى محمد. Thank you so much. وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. May the Milad of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam be Mubarak to all of you. A person comes to Imam Askari alayhi salam asking him a way to send salutations to the infallibles. And as you know, salawat is something that is very recommended. It is one of the things that salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad is one of the heaviest things in the mizan, in the scale in the hereafter. But he wanted a short salutations because you can do ziyarat of the imams and you can also send salawat to the imams. And some of the ulama say this, these salutations that Imam Askari alayhi salam is going to be teaching, if you want to visit the imams, do one of these salutations first and then visit the imam. So the imam teaches 14 salawat, and you can look through in Mafati, you can look at dua.org. I shared with you last week that they're very short. The one for Rasulullah, if recited long, is like 3 minutes. So this person wanted something very short. Maybe he's from Southern California, we don't know. Something short but to the point, because he didn't want, very long, lengthy dua. So the Imam teaches him these salawat for the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, and then he asks, what about for yourself? He even says to the Imam, ask what about yourself? And the shortest salawat in this that Shaykh Tusi brings is for Imam Askari alayhi salam. In the salawat that last week we talked about, the salawat for Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, in the salawat for Rasulullah there's a very important line. Now if you are going to be free this weekend, I recommend go and search salawat for Ahlul Bayt, dua.org. It will give you 14 salawat. From this salawat, one of the lines is this. It says, وَصَلِّ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Kama rahimta bihil ibad. As you, for his sake, had mercy on the servants. Meaning that for the servants of Allah, what is the way that Allah and through whom He is giving us blessings and giving us mercy? It is through Rasulullah. Meaning that whatever we have in this world, whatever we'll have in the next, is because of the Prophet. Therefore, when you think of this sentence itself, the rahmat of Allah is channeled through Rasulullah to us. That means that the fact that we are in this world, in the narrations mentions, if it was wasn't for the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, we wouldn't even exist. There wouldn't be creation. In the fact that we will be saved by Rasulullah, or whatever blessings there are, it is channeled through Rasulullah. We owe Rasulullah, we owe Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam a lot. The fact that we are in other parts of the salawat that says that we have learned, he has taught salat. Before we are created in this world, which is the world of alamul ajsad, the world of bodies, there was another world called alamul arwah, the world of spirits. So there's two different creations for us. In the world of al-ajsad or bodies, Rasulullah was the last prophet, right? Prophet Adam alayhi salam was the first prophet. But in alamul arwah, in the world of the spirits, Rasulullah was the first prophet, was the first creation. And in the tradition it mentions that when the other prophets were created, he was their teacher. He was the teacher of Prophet Ibrahim. He was the teacher of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, teacher of Prophet Isa alayhi salam, and all the other prophets. And therefore we understand that even the other prophets have their benefit and their blessings and their rahmah based on Rasulullah. Tonight we're going to go over 5 qualities of the noble prophet through the Holy Quran. Because the tradition mentions that Rasulullah mentions to Imam Ali alayhi salam, only you and I understand Allah. And only Allah and you understand me, have ma'rifat of me, and only me, I, and Allah and I understand you, Ali alayhi salam. So therefore we're going to go to the Holy Quran and see what verses can we present tonight that allow us to understand the best of creation, the one who we owe our existence to, we owe our deen to, we owe our salat to, the fact that we pray, we fast, this path that we have, the path of Islam, the fact that we are saved from all these threats and all these spiritual diseases that exist today. We owe it to Rasulullah. So the ayah that I'm going to be mentioning and sharing with you is 128 in Surah Tawbah. The ayah is this: لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. There has been sent to you a messenger from yourselves. 5 qualities. Number 1 is this. 2, عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْكُمْ مَا عَنِتُّمْ. Grievous to him is what you suffer. حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ. He is haris to you. بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. And he is to the believers kind and merciful. So the first sentence, the first quality that we first start with is this: لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ. There has come to you a messenger. And obviously this title and laqab of Rasulullah that we say means he is the messenger of Allah. A messenger that has been from the dua of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. When he built the Kaaba, رَبَّنَا وَابْعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ. He prayed for the Meccans and he prayed for them, Allah, bring for them a Rasul, bring from amongst the Meccans a Rasul, a messenger. And Allah answered the dua of Prophet Ibrahim. And many years later came Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Please recite salawat. So the first quality of Rasulullah is the fact that he is a messenger. And he is bringing a message. And therefore, when you look at this message, the fact that inside this message holds the secrets of life, holds how I can live a complete and wholesome life. And this message affects me today as a Muslim living in the US, 1400 years after the Prophet. And I'm sure that many of you, all of you, have experienced the benefit of Islam and have seen in your personal lives what Islam has done for you, right? So this means this message must be something special. This message that came from a time of Jahiliyyah, a time of age of ignorance, where they would make idols from food, from dates, and then at noontime they would become hungry and they would eat their own idols. This is the time of Jahiliyyah, the time of ignorance. The time when there would be battles, years of battles over one camel. For example, the person named Qulayb, he says that this is my land. Whoever enters this land, he will be executed, he will be killed. And a poor camel comes and enters his kingdom, Qulayb's kingdom. As far as my dog can bark, this is my kingdom. The poor camel comes in, he says, what are you doing in my empire? Kills him. Then the family, for example, and the owner of that, the owner of the camel become upset. They attack, for example, Qulayb, his family, and a war starts in the age of ignorance for 40 years after who killed this camel, for example. You're talking about this time. This time where those that were literate were a handful. You have wars for years over one camel. A time where polytheism, idol worshipping, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam came with Prophet Ismail and set and rebuilt and built the Kaaba and established Hajj and called everyone to Hajj. But yet the descendants of Prophet Ismail, slowly and slowly and slowly, majority of them became deviated and turned in Mecca into a idol worshipping, turned into Hajj as clapping, and put one idol in Marwa, put one idol in Safa, for example, put idols in the holy Kaaba. And it became, Hajj became worshipping of idols. From this era, where when a daughter was born, their faces would change in color, and they would some of the tribes would bury them just because they're female. In such age of ignorance, you see that this message comes to us. And one of the miracles, don't just limit the miracle of Islam to the Holy Quran, is the message of it. The way that this message came to us and how this message affects us is one of the miracles of the Holy Quran. It's not only the eloquence of the Holy Quran. Shaykh Assad says something very interesting. Says, for example, if you were to see someone in elementary school and they were to write to you one of the highest poetries or highest, for example, most complicated books. Let's just say, for example, somebody in elementary school comes forward and says, look, father or teacher, I wrote a book. So, well, how do you know how to read and write this well? Your teacher is doing a good job in the 4th grade, for example. He says, no, I can know. And then you look at it, you equate it to Shakespeare, and then you see there that is actually better, even better quality than Shakespeare, for example, Shakespeare. What would you say? Would you say that this elementary school teacher, this elementary school student, wrote this by themselves, or they must have came from the outside, must have come from somewhere else, they got help from somewhere else? He compares the same example, how it's impossible for you to say that an elementary school student would be able to write the best work or most eloquent work in English, for example. He says, in the same time, it is impossible for Arabs at that time to have and deliver a message that could shape modern life today, that could change the rule of life in for the Byzantines, for the Persians, an area where none of these two empires are very interested in. So therefore, this shows as one of the proofs of the righteousness and the correctness of Islam, is that this message came from where? From a time period where people could not even, society was not functioning right. And as we said, they were making idols and then consuming them, for example. How could it be that this message that today you're benefiting so much and so many people are becoming Muslim, and whoever practices this deen says that I have a better life, even though we're in a different continent? How can it be this message come from Arabia if it was not from God, if it wasn't from Allah? How could this message not be true when this message itself challenges, Quran challenges to write one surah like me, one surah like it, or even 10 verses like it. And for 1400 years, nobody has been able to write a surah as short as Qul Huwallahu Ahad, and as meaningful as Qul Huwallahu Ahad, and as impactful as Qul Huwallahu Ahad. This is one of the miracles of the Quran. It challenges. No other book challenges humanity to write and produce. Wouldn't it have been easier, for example, instead of the Battle of Badr and Uhud and the Khandaq and all the other maybe 50, 60 battles that the Prophet himself was in, or Muslims were attacked, or Muslims participated in these 50, 60 wars, wouldn't have been easier for the mushrikeen and polytheists to just produce one surah like the Holy Quran? Because at that time, eloquence was what they were good at. Every prophet came according to the time period, and they brought that miracle according to the time period of the people. For example, the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salam was the time period of sorcery. So therefore, Prophet Musa alayhi salam produced something that the sorcerers did sujood to. There were thousands, from 1,000 of sorcerers, 70 were elected. And these 70, when they saw the miracle of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, they became Muslim, they became followers of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and Pharaoh killed all of them, and all of them were shaheed. They were killed. Or you look at the time of Prophet Isa alayhi salam, what was prevalent was healing. And there was sickness happening, and Prophet Isa alayhi salam came, and there was a huge line of people waiting to get the cure from Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So Allah brought to them that time period something that they knew they could not produce. And he gave life to those who were dead. And in some of the narrations say, he gave life to people that were thousands of years dead, and asked them, do you want to remain alive or not? They said, no, I don't want to remain alive, because that death was so painful for me that I do not want to experience it again. Allow me to be at peace. But during the time of Rasulullah, it was eloquence. And then the Holy Quran came. And they had, for example, Walid ibn Mughira and the likes of him come and say, look, you are an expert at language, you're an expert in poetry, come and say something about this Quran. And all he could say is, this is witchcraft. This is witchcraft. Why? It's saying that man cannot produce this Quran. So therefore, the first quality of Rasulullah is that he's bringing the message, bringing the Holy Quran, bringing a message that is impacting all of us. And as long as we practice and we truly abide by all of this message, not parts of it, we will be guided, we will be changed. The second part to understand in this second part of this verse is Rasulun min anfusikum, is a messenger from amongst yourselves. Now this is very interesting, because in one aspect Rasulullah is completely not different, is not like us, because he receives revelation. His knowledge is not knowledge that he studied. When they say Nabi Ummi, the best way to understand this from our scholars is not to, God forbid, say he's illiterate, is to say that he is untaught. He did not seek knowledge. And if he was taught, for example, they'll say, well, who produced the Quran? Who, for example, where did the Quran come from? His teachers. But when Rasulullah is Ummi and he is not taught, it shows us that this message is genuine. But the second difference is this. The second thing is this, is that he is a similarity. He is like us. He is from us. Min anfusikum. Allah could have brought an angel. Allah could have brought, for example, a beautiful light to guide us, for example. But Allah chose to bring a human like us. So Rasulullah is like us, that he's a human. But he's not like us because he receives revelation. He is like us, that means he sleeps. Rasulullah has sleep. He is like us, that he eats, he drinks. He's human, he is human. We said this is alamul ajsad. But his spirit and ruh is completely separate than us. It is the purpose of creation. It is the ruh and spirit that through this spirit, Allah gave mercy to all of us. If you look at some of the traditions, very interesting. So I'm talking about the similarities and the differences with us and Rasulullah. The differences is this, is that one of the traditions, and maybe I shared it here, is if you calculate all the mercy of the world, all of the acts of kindness of the world, from the beginning of creation, and then if you had a calculator, you would keep adding each one. Each time a human was compassionate to another human. Each time an animal was compassionate to another animal. From the beginning of creation into now, what number would that be? If he summed it all up, whatever happened on earth in terms of kindness. The tradition says all of the rahmah and mercy on earth compared to the rahmah and mercy of Allah in the hereafter is 1 out of 100. 1 part of the 100 parts of the mercy of Allah will happen on earth. All of this kindness that you've ever seen is 1. Then the tradition says that 99 other parts, or the rest of the parts, will all happen in the hereafter. The mercy of Allah will be shown. And then another tradition says, and this mercy of Allah will be channeled to us through Rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So again, we're paying attention. 1 mercy of Allah, 1 part of His mercy is earth's mercy. 99 parts of Allah's mercy is hereafter mercy. And this hereafter mercy is channeled through Rasulullah. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam in the khutbah mentions and says to the people of Kufa that you think that, which verse of Allah, which verse of the Quran is the most merciful, verse of Allah. You think it is this verse, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنُطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. You think that the verse is, O you servants of mine who have transgressed against your own selves, Do not despair of God's mercy. It says, you think this is the most merciful verse, even though this verse is saying, Ibadi, my slaves that has sinned. Allah is still considering my slaves, my servants that you have sinned. Then it says, Allah will forgive all sins. It says, you think, maybe if you think of it by ourselves in our own minds, you think this is the best verse. In Shahr Ramadan, I will share this verse. And a lot of the mimbaris and a lot of lectures talk about this verse in Surah Al-Zumar 53. But then Amir al-Mu'minin says, no, there is another verse. This verse is what us, Ahlul Bayt salam, and the tradition says, we see as the most merciful verse in the Quran, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And soon your Lord will give you so much, Rasulullah, until you are satisfied. Shia, Sunni, everyone say. When it comes to this verse, what is it talking about? Ash-shafa'a, ash-shafa'a, ash-shafa'a. Intercession, intercession, intercession. So this is how Allah's mercy is channeled, and this is the being, complete being who tonight we are speaking about. In Allah, we are asking Allah that tonight, through the mercy of, through the creation of Allah, through the creation of Rasulullah, through the blessings of Rasulullah, to inshallah grant us all of our hawa'ij, our du'as, and to inshallah remove affliction from all the ummah, inshallah. So far we said, so there's two qualities of Rasulullah. One, he is a Rasul. He gives a message, and mankind needs to have this message. He uses his mind, his intellect. Mankind learns by his five senses. But this is not sufficient in order to know the truth. He needs something besides intellect and besides perception and seeing and hearing, and that is revelation. Revelation completes us. And the other part, Rasulullah had problems that he faced. Ma udi Nabi kama udi. No prophet was challenged and bothered as much as me. And he had a son, for example. He had children who passed away during his lifetime. He suffered, for example, in battle, injuries, even though he was the bravest. And the most interesting thing is, Rasulullah would lead the charges. And some of the statements from Amir al-Mu'minin, our Imam who has about 1,000 scars, Shaykh al-Saduq says Imam Ali has 1,000 scars at the end of his life. He says that during the hardest parts of the battle, I would seek refuge in Rasulullah. Imagine the bravery of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, that he would seek refuge in Rasulullah. He himself would fight because he's rahmah and there's mercy on the people. He wouldn't say, oh people, you go and fight, I'm your prophet. He would be there to fight, and he would send his nafs, his most loved, to fight. That's how Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam are. They send themselves to fight for you, for your guidance. And therefore, some of the du'as of Rasulullah, even Sunni scholars bring these prayers, that he says when he sends off Imam Ali alayhi salam to battle, he asks Allah, allow me to see Ali alayhi salam again. Allow me to see him again. And that he would pray for Ali's protection. So Rasulullah would send from himself. He would spend from himself. And later on, when he passed away, his daughter, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, sacrificed herself for this message. This is the family who tonight we are speaking about Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam the same way. The third attribute that tonight we want to go over is this attribute from the same verse of the Holy Quran, as we read. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil fajr. Azizun alayhi ma anittum. Grievous to him is what you suffer. Shia and Sunni believe that our actions are presented to Rasulullah today. Even though he has passed away, that he is alive. They have numerous traditions, and we have numerous traditions that when you perform good or bad, that is presented to Rasulullah. So this is Azizun alayhi ma anittum. Grievous to him is what you suffer. He knows your whereabouts. He knows what you are doing. Some of the traditions, what they call this, i'rad, in presentations of a'mal ila Nabi, the presentation of actions to the Prophet, it says that first the Imam of the age understands and is aware, then it goes to the next Imam, and then it goes to Rasulullah, And then that knowledge goes from Rasulullah, is presented, ta'arif presented to Allah. So therefore, if we understand this third quality, that grievous to Rasulullah is what we suffer, and how much he wanted to make sure that his qawm was not obliterated from dua, like for example the people of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, that he wanted to have mercy and patience upon them. How much did he care for our guidance? That would mean that we would, brothers and sisters, that we would care more about how we act, so that we are not in a way ashamed. We're not ashamed for Rasulullah. We are ashamed for him. As the dua we read, it says, Ilahi in adkhaltani nar fa fi dhalika surura aduwik. Allah, if you allow me to enter the fire, then it is here a happiness for your enemies. Wa in adkhaltani al-jannah fa fi dhalika surura nabiyik. But if I enter heaven, this will be happiness for Rasulullah. He becomes very happy. So therefore, we have to live our lives in a way that you believe Rasulullah is alive, and he is. We don't believe that, God forbid, that souls are annihilated after. We believe that there's tasallut and sulta that Rasulullah has on this world. He is informed, and he has, wilayat over this world. So therefore, we understand that we have this connection, that, when you say in salawat for the Prophet, he hears it, he understands it. When you do good actions, he is happy of you. God forbid, when you do bad actions, he is, he understands this. In the fourth part, we say in this, verse, harisun alaykum. He is eager, he is desirous over you for your guidance. He is grievous over you. A person came to Rasulullah, in the history it says, a Bedouin came to him, and there wasn't much knowledge, there wasn't the correct information that he had of the Prophet. He comes forward, and he was very angry at the Prophet. And it says that he was sitting with a group of people. He stood up and rudely said to the Prophet, "O Muhammad, you are a lying sorcerer." He uses this terminology, this vocabulary to the Prophet. "I don't know a bigger liar than you. If I could, I would kill you with this, and save the people from your evil." Imagine if someone says this about one of our friends, for example, how upset you'd be. Imagine if we were in front of Rasulullah, someone spoke to the Prophet this way, how upset you would be and what reaction you would have. Is somebody that's saying that Rasulullah, God forbid, should not deserve to live. So they wanted to stand up, the companions, to teach this man a lesson. The Prophet said to him, "Sit down, come and sit." He brought this person with a smile. He said, "Harisun alaykum." He is eager, desires for your guidance. He begins to look at his face with compassion, with affection. And he says to him, he's from the tribe of Bani Salim. He says, "Ya akha Bani Salim." Oh, brother from Bani Salim. And he mentions to him, that maybe the messenger of God, he wants to give respect to him. And he says, "Come to him, I will give you what you want." He begins with his compassion. He starts giving him, for example, food. He starts to give him money. And this is the same person who has begun to rudely speak to Rasulullah. At this time, this man who said, "I wanted to come and say this to Rasulullah," to kill him, for example, or to, tell everyone that he's a liar. He says, at this time, when the exact opposite, that he smiled in front of me, that he is compassionate to me, that he wants to give to me, he says that here, I thought that, you were one of the worst. But after this, he becomes a Muslim and says that you are one of the best. I do not know anyone better than Rasulullah. Rasulullah then later on tells the companions and gives them in the story, in history, an example that there is a person who had lost his camel, was running around and was not being able to be controlled. And he says, my example that I showed to this person is the same example as that Bedouin with the camel, with the Arab with the camel. That this camel was very scared, was running around, was frightened, and people came to chase it down, and the camel was frightened more, until this person came and offered some hay, for example, compassion to the camel, and calmed him down. He said, paraphrasing, that my approach is in the same way, that we know how to, treat people. I know better how to calm the people than you do, for example. So we see harisun alaykum, that he is eager, desirous over our guidance. And this is one of the lessons that we learn from Rasulullah, is that I know many times we get frustrated, many times with maybe our family members, our friends, our community, or outside, that we have a lot of high expectations. But you see that as long as we are calm, and as long as you have good akhlaq, and as long as you are kind to the people, then people will come forward and become guided. But if you are very harsh with them, and our Quran mentions, if Rasulullah was harsh, they would run away from him. But it is from the rahmat of Allah that he was lenient to them. And this is for our teachers, this is for ourselves as a community, that when we teach with patience, when we teach with, good akhlaq, inshallah, we will be victorious. And the last is bil mu'minin ra'ufun rahim, and he is kind and merciful to the believers. And we said this, that Rasulullah will do shafa'at for us. But from one of the last things I'd like to say tonight is that Rasulullah gives us advice, and this is my advice to you and myself, that after we learn that he is a Rasul, he is from us, he is grievous to what we suffer, and he is Ra'ufur Rahim bil Mu'mineen, he is Ra'uf. He comes to Abu Dhar and gives this tradition to Abu Dhar, that Ya Abu Dhar, kun bit taqwa ashaddu ihtamaman minka bil amal. O Abu Dhar, in regards to sinning, be more careful than to actions. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَقِلُّ عَمَلٌ بِالتَّقْوَى وَكَيْفَ يَقِلُّ عَمَلٌ يُتَقَبَّلُ. He says to him, have taqwa. In action, refraining from sinning, even though this might look small, that comes from a person that is refraining from sinning, this cannot be small because this is accepted. Because Allah says, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. The last thing that I'd like to, from this speech, to inform us is something that we can learn from Rasulullah, is that effort that he always strove for us to gain taqwa, for us not to sin, for us to obey Allah. Even though many times we want to, sometimes our taklif might be overburdening, sometimes our obligations might be hard. But that is where the reward is. That is how you can be a'badun nas. That is how you can be the best of worshippers. One who follows what Allah commands. One who is used to taklif and obligation that Allah has given us. And if we try to make deen and change it to a way where we think is right, and we say, for example, this issue of wearing clothes or hijab, it doesn't have to be that, for example, strict, or this, for example, way that I'm looking or protecting my eyes. It doesn't have to be that way, and this way of interacting with someone else, and this way about talking behind someone's back, and this way, about giving khums and giving Islamic duties, and this about performing and establishing prayer. Maybe it's qada, it's okay, I'll do qada of it. Maybe this becomes a religion that is man-made. Tonight that we're talking about Rasulullah, we want true religion from him. One, that we follow everything that he says. Once you follow that, that is the status of taqwa. But if, God forbid, when I look at myself and analyze myself and I see that I'm still lacking some of the wajibat, that means that I have to work on myself to establish taqwa, even if my actions are low. But how can actions be low when they are accepted? Would you rather have a lot of actions that are not accepted or a few that are accepted? So the first stage in our spirituality, and actually here it says, A'badun nas, the best slave, is the one who follows the true teachings of Rasulullah, the one who does not change Islam, the one who Rasulullah that mentions that there will be a time where ma'ruf will become munkar and munkar will be ma'ruf, that things that are commonly known as good will become evil in the eyes of people, and those that people view as evil will become good. Would you view that in some aspect we reach this time? that good has become bad and bad has become good. Do not be like those who change religion. Do not be like those who tries to be flexible when it comes to the deen, because this is what is attracting people to deen. The point of reference is still there from 1400 years ago. But other religions have lost this point of reference. People say, I want to become Muslim because I want to know true religion. I want to be able, for example, to read the book of God in its own language, not change. I want to follow the laws of God that have not been changed, that not have been tampered with, that have not been watered down. But yet you see in other religions, pork becomes allowed, hijab becomes removed, usury becomes allowed, for example. And at the end, for example, some say there's only 10 commandments. You only follow those. The rest, you'll be fine. But we have thousands of rulings that Rasulullah taught and Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam taught. Just look at the traditions of salat. 10,000 narrations about salat. Look at the rulings when it comes to Hajj. About 9,000 hadith about Hajj, for example. We owe Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam this. We owe the Imams this. Therefore, the last advice that I have in regarding to Rasulullah, as he tells Abu Dhar, that be careful more of your taqwa. To be careful to reach a stage where I don't sin anymore. Then you can build. Then you'll stop losing. Then your actions will actually count if we can reach this status. Do not think that just because I come to center, just for example, I have a beard, just for example, I have a job, necessarily means I have taqwa. They came to some of our greats and people who had permission to lead people in irfan and mysticism. They came to them and said, guide me. I'm a student of knowledge. Guide me. He said that you should practice your taqwa. He said, what? I'm a student of the Hawza. What do you mean? He says, think about it. Think about it. Practice your taqwa. Another person came to the same and says, I am suffering in this issue in my life. He said, you should practice taqwa, not sin. Another person, he said, all of these questions, all the answers, taqwa, for example, they told this. He passed away a few years ago. A person who had ijazah of mysticism of irfan. He said, many of you, the students, are only in the stage of taqwa. But yet you want to reach higher levels. This is the first, and this is obviously the best and most important stage for us. And this is the last thing that I want to say about Rasulullah. If we love him, we know that he is watching us, and that we have to be careful to have taqwa in all realms. Economic taqwa, financial taqwa, family taqwa, taqwa when it comes to commanding the good and forbidding the evil when it comes to Palestine and Gaza, and being concerned and active for brothers that are dying and being starved to death, as we mentioned last week. I need to live my life in a way that all realms of my life is beautiful, and it is all from the instructions of Rasulullah. As many of you know, tonight I was honored with being here for about 4 years. And I was always, my intention was to serve as much as I could, but I will be, unfortunately leaving and going to continue my studies, inshallah. And, I would like to thank the community and such, beautiful hearts and souls and faces that we've been able to, these last 4 years, this journey that we had together, that I truly benefited from you more, I think, maybe than you benefited from me, from your taqwa, from your iman. My advice is to keep continuing to come to centers. Keep continuing to come to Yasin. And the fact that you just see each other and your hearts hit each other, you don't even know the reward in that. You don't even know the effect that has compared to leaving and not coming here once a week at least. When we went to the Hawza, we would see our teacher in the morning and at night, 2 dosage. But here it's once a week. I would advise to have it twice a week, 3 times a week. But whatever you can, at least, if it maybe is recommended and good to go to centers in the Middle East, but it might be wajib to come to centers in the US, because you cannot practice Islam by yourself in the home when we have such an environment that is almost like the new age of ignorance, for example. You cannot survive. So therefore, come together. As the tradition says, if you want to be good, be with the good. And I thank all of you for attending these last years. And if I have done something wrong, and I'm sure I have, please forgive me, inshallah. Hopefully the future lecturers will fix my mistakes that I have made, inshallah. And I am, if you want to reach out to me, you can always reach out to me. And I will be here during the summers, inshallah. 3 or 4 months in the summers, I will be able to see you. And hopefully you will make, dua for me and my family, and I will be making dua for you, inshallah. And we make, a final dua, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you, because of our Prophet, that through Allah's mercy is channeled through him, allow us to sincerely continue the path that Rasulullah has brought for us, inshallah. Make our salat the salat of the khashi'een. Make, inshallah, our fasting the fasting of the pure, inshallah. Allow us to have taqwa in all realms of our life. Allow us to understand Rasulullah and his family. Give us the salvation, shafa'at, inshallah, intercession of Rasulullah. Remove suffering from Gaza, inshallah. Remove oppression from all our lands, inshallah. From around the entire world. Cure all those that are sick. Have mercy in our departed. And allow us to be of the companions of the Imam of the age and expedite his return with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farajahum. Thank
you. Children, any child that sits down and for the next 5 minutes, there'll be a reward, inshallah, afterwards. I can't tell you what the treat will be, but there's going to be a reward. But any child that's seen walking up and walking around, there'll be no treat. So you guys decide, okay? Yeah. Grown-ups are exempt. Okay, I'd like to invite Haj Kauthar to give final remarks. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.